Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for our live stream broadcast. I'm here with Reggie in the Dharma Ocean Shrine Room in Boulder, Colorado. This is our first public broadcast with Reggie, and we're very excited to gather with you all across time zones and continents to share in this new medium that helps us connect with the teachings in real time as a global community. Welcome, Reggie. Thank you so much for taking time to be with us tonight.
My pleasure.
Before we begin, I'd like to offer a bit of an orientation for how the flow of tonight's talk will go. In a moment, Reggie will lead us in a guided meditation, offer a talk, and then answer questions. If you have a question during the teaching, you can email it to livestream@dharmaocean.org. That email address is located just below the video player on your screen. Please include your name and where you're from. We'll collect questions over the course of this evening, and at the end, Reggie will offer a selection of them to answer. If you experience any issues viewing tonight's video stream, there's a troubleshooting guide underneath the video player on your screen. We'll also make a recording of tonight's live stream available sometime soon. So now I'll turn it over to you, Reggie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm sure all of us have had busy days. I've had a very busy day. I've been in charge of the family. Caroline's away. And Damien is 15 years old. And long story short, some kid threw his cell phone into a swimming pool yesterday. Meantime, he's out. I can't be in touch. And then somebody else threw the kid's phone into the swimming pool. But I eventually heard from him, and everything's cool, although I did spend the afternoon running around trying to find addresses of these other kids. So I'm sure those of you who have had 15-year-olds know how it goes. It's like being in an amusement park, only it's going 10 times faster. So for myself and for you, let's begin by doing some breathing into the lower belly. Let's all come back, and I'd like to invite you to join me with 12 breaths into the lower belly, and then we'll go from there. So we'll do this sitting up. If you're at home and you want to lie down, you can, but Elizabeth and I are going to sit up for this. So medium to full in-breath into the lower belly, and then exhale, exhale, exhale very, very, very fully, tightening down the lower belly to nothing, emptying out all of the stale prana, and then breathing in once again. Okay, so 12 breaths, please begin. And as your belly warms up, don't be afraid to apply a little bit more exertion on the out-breath. Okay, let's just do a couple more. And then just be in your body and feel the percolation, the flow of the energy. And then come to the back line, so feeling along the spine. And then opening your body from there. So there's a sense of the whole body opening out of the back line. So the space of the body is bigger. It's beyond the body, but we're still within that space. We're still within the somatic space of our opened body. Notice the quality of the space. It's empty, but it's bubbling. And let yourself be nourished by the bubbling, scintillating, percolating space of your body. Be present to it, open to it, and let yourself be nourished by it. Okay, very good. So we're going to do one more set of 12-fold lower belly breathing. Please begin. And this time as you breathe out, stay present to the qualities of the space in your body as you're doing the breathing. Open to that energetic quality of the space as you're doing the breathing. Let your somatic awareness be very bright and filled with life as you continue. Okay, I'm up to 9. Just keep going with me. And then let's do 2 more together. And then once again, just relax. Come into your back line, your central channel. And then open forward into the mid-body, and then open out. And notice the quality of the space. Set aside all external involvements and let the 10,000 things be, and abide in the space of the body. Empty, open, vast. Anytime anything comes up, just split it open and let it go. So, very gently, staying with this space, I want to talk to you about a few things today. I want to talk a little bit about this lineage of ours. We were given birth by a strange mother and a strange father. The mother was, you could say, the Tibetan spiritual tradition. And, I don't mean the whole of Tibetan culture, but I mean the really wonderful, miraculous lineage of awakening that came down from India and then to Tibet. And I think the father was Chogyam Trungpa. Of course, the baby, which is us, it's our lineage, very much inherits the genetic makeup of our father and our mother. But at the same time, we have to come out of the womb, which is not that easy. And in my case, it took me over 60 years to actually get out of the womb. The womb was actually great up to a certain point. And then I began to realize, wait a minute, I'm an adult, what am I doing in here? So, well, hopefully it won't take our lineage that long to sort of get out and get on its feet. But then we have to start to grow up, and that really is what we've been doing. And we've been going through all these wonderful phases for the last, really it's been over 20 years since I started, officially kind of teaching Dharma Ocean. And at this point, some things are clear, and I wanted to mention a few of them. We live in a very complicated world, and especially the spiritual world is very, very complicated. The religious world, the spiritual world, the world of meditation, the world of yoga, Hindu tradition, Buddhist tradition, Sufi tradition, Christian tradition, Jewish tradition, indigenous traditions. And at a certain point it becomes almost overwhelming, and we begin to wonder, how can I, find my way through this? And additionally, we have a lot of people. We are, as you know, we're the most social of all the primates. And we really, really, really care what other people think. And we're constantly talking to other people, constantly connecting, constantly sorting things out, constantly trying to find our place within the larger fabric. So we have this very strange mother and father, and we came out being kind of different in a way from a lot of what goes on. And I don't know if you'd be surprised, you might be surprised how often people ask me, well, how do I respond to this? How do I respond to that? How do I justify what we're doing? How do I answer this question or this doubt or this criticism? And I think, that's a very, very important question. Because not only do we have there's a lot of chaos and confusion around us in our world, but we ourselves have a lot of different things running through our mind. And we have our doubts, we have our suspicions, we have our confusions, we have our lack of clarity, and we have our burning questions. And what I want to say is that the practicing lineage and the success of our spiritual journey really doesn't depend on answering all those questions or resolving all those doubts at all. In fact, I think if we're really honest with ourselves, even with our own doubts and our own suspicions, we can never really lay them to rest. It's never going to happen. Our lineage survives on something else, something that is much more profound than anything we might think or anything that we might be confronted with in our lives. This lineage survives on the empty, open, vibrant, scintillating, sparkling awareness that opens up when we practice. I think often we find, and particularly for Vajrayana practitioners, we have a particular teaching that goes something like this. Trungpa Rinpoche once said, when you die, it's going to be in mid-sentence. You're not going to be able to finish your sentence. When you die, you're going to die in mid-thought. Whatever really important thought was going on with you, it's never going to be finished. And what he was getting at is that meditation represents jumping planes, you could say, jumping from one plane of existence to another plane of existence. It literally involves stepping out of the important but endless framework of thinking and judging and imagining and questions and answers and criticisms and doubts and suspicions and fears. You step out of that and you literally step into a different world. And the world that you step into when we do our somatic meditation, it's a timeless world. There is no time in that world. When we just did our practice, we stepped into a space where literally there is no past, present, and future. There's only this. And this happens to be boundless. And this contains all of the nourishment, all of the fulfillments that we have ever wanted in our life. This makes the practicing lineage, the somatic lineage of meditation that we follow, very, very outrageous. It's very outrageous. Because although we appear to be conventional, well, some of us appear to be conventional, I don't know, some of the time, generally, decent people, kind people, reasonable people, functional people, basically, we know that's not it. Because we could also be dysfunctional people and crazy people and, very ill people and people who are in prison. And from a certain point of view, it's the same thing. That's not really relevant to the question of how are we going to be free? How are we going to abide at the center of our life? The meditation practice opens up this gate and we step through and we're there. And from that point of view, anything that comes up for us, any situation, any life circumstance, any emotion, any person, anything we can imagine in our life simply becomes the weather that we live within. I was down in Crestone recently doing a solitary retreat and had a very, very interesting experience during that time. Caroline was teaching her Taking Refuge in the Body program. And I was in solitary retreat up on the hill in the cabin of the crazy one. And, we both felt that this was good and that I wouldn't come to the program, which turned out to be very good, so Caroline could really see the whole picture. If you hold the whole space and have to teach a whole, 10-day program, what does that feel like? And I also got to deeply, deeply contemplate what's going on in our lineage now, which is Caroline and a number of our other senior teachers are stepping forward and teaching their own programs and are becoming lineage holders in their own right. And so I got to contemplate what that means. One day I went out to the stupa, and it's about an hour and 15-minute walk from the retreat cabin, and this is the stupa of His Holiness the Gyalwa Karmapa. And on that particular day, I had heard, Caroline periodically checked in with me and told me, filled me in, gave me updates on the program. Some people, one person got up and said, well, my Buddhist friends, whoever they may be, said that what Reggie's doing is not legitimate. And, we hear this all the time, and I understand from their point of view it's not legitimate because it calls into question the whole conventional view. So, yeah, our lineage from the conventional standpoint not only is not legitimate, it's actually outrageous that you could actually step out of your conceptual mind and abide in a space where the judgments really are not relevant. So anyway, this always triggers me, and I wouldn't say always triggers me, but frequently triggers me when I hear that kind of stuff, and I think, don't people know anything about Buddhism? And I don't really have to answer that question for myself. So I went out to the stupa, and I thought I would check in with His Holiness. the 16th Karmapa, who I met it in this life and was very, very strongly affected by. So I go out to the stupa and I sit down, and I was kind of pissed, and I said, why do we have to put up with all this nonsense? We're doing this, we're carrying on the lineage. There's so many devoted people here. Why do we have to put up with the nonsense of people who basically, they either don't know anything about Buddhism, or they're not practitioners, or they're just, trading on rumors, blah, 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 blah. So I'm, really exercised. And I looked up at His Holiness, because in the stupa, facing south, there's a big window, and there's a statue of him there, so you can sit in front of it and kind of look up at him. And it had been very cloudy for the whole entire time. For the 10 days that I had been down there, it had been cloudy every single day, and barely any sunlight at all, direct sun. And all of a sudden, this field opens up right over the stupa like this, and it's totally blue sky. And meantime, it's surrounded by all these clouds. But it wasn't just blue sky, it was actually him. It was the brilliant, open, slightly wrathful, crystalline clarity of his own mind. And what I got from it, which was, no thought required on my part, is what he said basically was, listen, when you are doing what you're doing and what the Dharma Ocean community is doing, and when you're prioritizing the awakened state of mind and an awareness that is really not tied up with ego and with ambition and with agendas, when you step into this space, which is my mind and my space, and it's the space of the Buddhas of the 3 times, that brilliant, open, fabulous, fantastic, amazing vista, arena of mind, you're always going to have these clouds swirling around the edges. It's always going to happen. And it was so helpful, because I think there was something in me, and I think there may be something in all of us, that in a way, at least I'll speak for myself, I see a lot of things going on, and particularly a lot of things in what I call the mothership, Trungpa Rinpoche's Vajradhatu Sangha, which then became Shambhala International. There are a lot of things going on there that I find very, very upsetting. There are a lot of things that come in my direction that I find very, very upsetting. And there's a little part of me, truthfully, that just wants the whole thing to collapse, or wants them just go away, go away and leave us alone. And what His Holiness said was, that's not how it works. Anytime you are presenting the teachings of egolessness, the teachings of no spiritual materialism, of what Rinpoche called the Buddha Dharma without credentials, anytime you're doing practice for its own sake, and you're willing to let go of your territory, and you're willing to surrender, and you're willing to be open, and you're willing to be naked in that way, that is the true Buddha Dharma. And number one is, you're in the center, and so you're protected. So that's very important. I didn't mention that. He said, do not worry. You are completely and totally protected. There is a protection there. Your teachings, your community, your teachers, the practitioners in this lineage, whoever they may be and however far they may extend, you are all in that clear, open space, and that's actually the main point. And when you do abide in that clear, open space at the center, and you do that through your practice, then the clouds are going to be there. And they're going to be just swirling around, and sometimes they're stormy, and sometimes they are just, they're there, sometimes they're heavy, sometimes they're light, but they're always going to be there, because the samsaric mind is incredibly offended by the teaching of egolessness. And I do remember in Rinpoche's day that, for example, he was constantly having to deal with things like this. And there was, I remember one time at Naropa, it must have been early, maybe 75. This guy came from Harper's Magazine, and he was wandering around with a notebook, and he had this sort of scowl on his face. And you could tell, he didn't like Rinpoche before he even showed up. He went around collecting data to support his case, and then he went out and wrote a very, very disgusting, misleading, and frankly, error-filled, misquoting people, article for Harper's Magazine that actually ended up being a big problem for all of us. And what His Holiness wanted to say is, don't worry, that's just how it works in this world. But those clouds are not, they're not really affecting you. They're swirling around, and you're in a space that is inherently protected. So it was very, very, very powerful, very shocking. In some sense, the experience itself was low-key. I just looked up and there was this big hole in the clouds. But then I kind of looked and I saw it was him, and it was his mind. And the same mind that we know very well when we truly let go and rest in the natural state. So I want to say that for all of us, this is why practice in our lineage is so very important. There are many spiritual traditions, many Buddhist traditions, many Tibetan traditions where you're advised to practice, and some people do and some people don't. And it doesn't seem to make that much difference, at least to the people I've talked to. But in our lineage, because what we're doing is so, in a sense, if you don't mind me saying so, it's so uncompromising, and it's so much to the point, which is how Rinpoche was, that if you don't practice, you're going to get caught. The only way to stay in the clear, open space of your own basic being is by your practice. It's the only way to do it. And, I've been, it's kind of gets to the point where I can't even do the math anymore, but I started meditating in 1970, so what is that, 45 years ago, and it remains true today that if I don't stay connected through my practice, I'm not going to say every single day, but if I don't stay very, very close to my practice, those clouds start getting me. They start sweeping in and they start pulling me out. So truly, in my case, and I think for all of us, staying very, very close to our practice and having such a sense of devotion for it. I mean, I feel personally so incredibly fortunate that I can get lost, I can lose myself, I can get swept away by, all kinds of things. For example, yesterday I met with one of Trungpa Rinpoche's close students who's been enormously supportive of Dharma Ocean. But it was hard. I mean, I had to listen to his unbelievable pain about what's happened to Trungpa Rinpoche's teachings. And it really affected me. And I just, and I had a rough night. And this morning I got up and I thought, thank heavens, I can go sit down on my bench and I can just stay there and I can just let my mind unravel itself, which is, of course, how it works. We work with the body and then the mind takes care of itself. We have a long, long history behind us that goes back, in my opinion, it goes back probably even before the Buddha, of this sense of tremendous embodiment that we experience in our meditation. But it doesn't do anybody any good if we don't do it on a daily basis. It's really worthless. You know, it doesn't do any good as a memory. It's interesting that when people in our Sangha, you know, people come and people go, and that's as it should be. You know, we're not an organized religion. We are a group of people who deeply, deeply love the body, who deeply appreciate the sacredness of the body, who deeply appreciate the sacredness of this life and our incarnation in the world, and will not turn against it for anything. And at the same time, if we don't actually do it, it just becomes an idea, and all of a sudden we're not staying close. When people do stop practicing, then pretty soon they leave the Sangha, and not permanently, but I've known people stop practicing, they go away for 5 or 6 years. And you know, I'm not passing judgment, but at the same time it is lost time. You know, we don't have that much time left, and so I want to do everything I can for everybody to stay, you know, very, very close. So the other thing I wanted to mention today, which is very much part of this, is we are a consort lineage. And I want to talk about that a little bit, because the consort principle is not, it's one that applies to all of us, actually, everywhere. I don't know if you've seen, but we made a change on the picture on the website. And if you look on the homepage now, you're going to see a picture of Caroline and me. It's not just me anymore. And from a certain point of view, there were some senior people who freaked out when they saw that, which I thought was interesting. But it's a very, very important change. Because in several ways, and I was talking to Scott Merriam, who's here, and I was asking him, you know, for his take, and he mentioned 3 things that I think very much part of who we are. He said that, you know, up until just recently, you know, up until, you know, we made this shift, that there was something a little bit cold about the homepage, and the way I would put it is, you know, just having a man there, that's not us. That's not what we're doing. And he said, number 1 is warm, a sense of warmth and openness toward the Sangha, toward the world. Number 2, relationality, which is very much what we're about. And that's what I want to talk about, is this principle of relationality. And the third thing that he said he thought was interesting was Caroline's picture is actually bigger than mine. And she's in the foreground and I'm kind of in the background. And, you know, she's sort of feminine principle holding the space, but also projecting enormous peacefulness and love. And I'm, you know, in the back kind of, somebody said, it looks like you're in bed. Well, I was in bed, to tell you the truth. I mean, I wasn't in bed, but we were sitting on our bed. So a sense of relationality and playfulness, and that maybe the feminine is, in Caroline, is maybe it's time for that to be more front and center. Caroline, of course, represents all of you. She represents everybody, the whole next generation of Dharma Ocean. So we are, we're in a process of a very beautiful change, and it's different from what's happened in this world. Many of my friends, some of whom are dead now, have not kind of been in the fortunate position that I have and that we have of figuring out how to allow the fundamental transmission of their tradition to truly live in the senior practitioners. and in fact all the practitioners. Most of my friends have been men, and they have, it hasn't worked out. But Trungpa Rinpoche was very, very interesting, because you will hear people say, well, Rinpoche empowered the regent, but he didn't empower anybody else. But actually he did. He actually empowered everybody that he worked with in a certain very particular kind of way. And this is what I'm trying to do with you. His empowerment was, although he held on very tight, and I think because we were so crazy, during the period of his life, we were all kind of hippies and, drug crazed and power hungry, and, we hadn't really worked on ourselves and so on. But his approach was to say yes to the energy, to your basic energy, to your creativity, to the part of you that was willing to take chances and to open, the part of you that really wanted to explore, but didn't, was afraid to. How many times did I present something in a very hesitant way to Rinpoche? Something that I deeply felt, something I deeply wanted, something I deeply felt inspired to do, but was afraid. I was afraid of myself. And in every single case, he said, you have to go ahead. Like I say to you, that's what I say, you have to go ahead, you have to explore. This utter trust in life that he had. And I think what happens, we talk about this with children and with parents. In the beginning it was just, okay, I'll do this. Okay, yes, okay, I can go ahead with this. Okay, I can go ahead with that. I can trust this, I can trust that. And meantime, there's the view, which is always coming through, which is trust yourself, trust what comes up in your life. Trust whatever arises. When the door opens, just step through it. Don't think about it, just do it. Just do it. He was saying that all the time. So, at a certain point, you start to incorporate, the way a small child does, not just the information of the situation, but you begin to incorporate that way of being. And you yourself begin to say yes to yourself. You learn that you have to trust what comes up, and but you have to see it. I had to see it in Rinpoche. I had to see it in somebody whom I loved and whom I trusted so much. Meantime, of course, I was deathly afraid of him much of the time. So you incorporate it, and then what happens is, if somebody tells you, oh no, you can't say yes to yourself, it's like it doesn't go in. So many, as you know, so many people in the world, in fact, probably all of samsara, is driven by this, everybody is saying no to everybody else. Everybody is trying to reduce everybody else to the lowest common denominator. And it's the way of the world. And I think one of the great teachings of spirituality in general, and also something that is beginning to, permeate other, so-called secular traditions in the West, is how pernicious and how destructive that approach is. Well, I was trained to say yes to myself, and it took a long time. It took not just the 17 years I knew Rinpoche, but it took 10 years before that, and with June Singer, and then 15 years after that, when I was going through all what I was going through with Shambhala International. But at a certain point, it's incorporated, and it's how you live life. And that's what I'm trying to pass on to you. That's the essential lineage the Rinpoche taught. Was number one, connect with your experience, and to do that you've got to be in your body, 100% your body, you've got to be there. And number two, trust what you find. Trust what your Soma offers you. And then number three is go with it. Act on it, be it. If we are willing, and again, this is a completely, from a conventional standpoint, this is completely outrageous. Everybody feels that we have to legitimize ourselves through reference to outside sources, to religious authorities, to books, whatever it may be, legal systems, ethical systems, philosophical systems. Who you are and what you're doing is not okay unless you have some external authority that says it is. I mean, isn't that how it works? But when you are trained in this lineage and your experience of yourself is so deep and so powerful and so authentic, and your whole relative way of relating is to step back from your hesitation, step back from your self-doubt, from your self-hatred, come into the openness and the freedom and the wholesomeness of your body and the wisdom of your body and the life of your body, and you say yes. Stepping back is saying yes, and then you step back into the world. When you're trained in that world of inner awakening, of the inherent wakefulness of the body, then you are protected in just the way His Holiness was saying. You're going to be protected against whatever may come up in your life. A woman recently connected with one of our senior MIs in I think it was the Sutriyana course, and she wrote me a long email. It was really long. It was like 5 pages, and one of the things she asked me was, well, what about my affiliation? Do I renounce my affiliation in this particular Sangha I'm part of, and do I join up with Dharma Ocean? And I think, my response basically was, I wonder if we could ask another question. The question is, how do you want to be? How do you want to live? And as far as your affiliation goes, it doesn't matter. I mean, you can be a Dharma Ocean student, you can be a Christian minister. Some of my students are Christian ministers. You can be, following a Hindu teacher. A number of our students are very, very close to Hindu teachers. It doesn't really matter. The only thing that matters is, are you willing to prioritize your practice, and are you willing to truly surrender to what your body knows and to what arises out of the empty, open, inner, immaculate space of your own soma? That's the question. And if the answer to that question is yes, then the question to your whole entire existence is also going to be yes. And I'm going to trust you wherever you go and whatever you do. So it's interesting to talk about our lineage, because the way we talk about lineage and the way most of particularly the Tibetans talk about lineage is completely different. I mean, I think everybody knows that. We talk about lineage as the transmission of a living experience of being human and a living experience of being truly unformatted, being willing to live in a way where life is not just thought to be mysterious, but we experience it as being mysterious, enigmatic, and as a riddle that is constantly unraveling, untangling, and showing itself to us moment by moment. That's what our lineage actually is. And then you hear about people saying, well, lineage is this other thing, and it's this, kind of official, set of beliefs, or, legal commitments, or whatever it may be. But that, from our point of view, and I think from the point of view of most of the practicing lineage, that kind of thing is meaningless. It's just totally empty. I mean, who cares? Who cares? You can do anything you want to, as long as it's you. And the only way we know it's you is if it's coming out of the non-conceptual space of your own basic experience. So, very interesting moment for us in the history of our Sangha. A wonderful moment. Caroline, just a word or two about her program. it's amazing how much I knew about the program, although I didn't attend the program. I never, I never stuck my face in the door. But somehow or other, people kept me up to date one way or the other. My retreat master, Sam Hemp, was, bringing me food, and, Caroline stopped by, I think once or twice. This was big, because 70 people, and a lot of them not only didn't know me, they didn't even know who I was. It was at that level, and I felt this is good. This is really what we've been looking for. And the other thing is, I have to tell you something funny. Caroline has, we're a couple, and we couples go through all the ups and downs, and she loves me deeply, but there are no illusions about, I'm difficult to be around and all of it. But one day she came and she said to me, "You're my hero," which I thought, I wish I'd had a tape recorder for that. And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because now that I'm sitting in that seat, and I actually have to manage the whole program, and I have to relate to everybody in the program, and I have to, give talks, I have to have the most horrendous interview on planet Earth," which actually happened to her, "and then I have to get up out of that chair, walk into the room, and talk to 70 people. Now I'm starting to see what's involved in this." And the thing is, I think at that time, the kind of the magnitude of what it means to be a lineage holder and to sit in that seat was hitting her. But also there was a tremendous sense, I think, also of freedom, because she and some other people, Tammy Simon, David Iozzi, Neil McKinley, and some of the other senior teachers are really starting to operate at the lineage holder level, and it's very moving for me, and it's very amazing, and particularly in Caroline's situation, because nobody's ever taught that big of a program all by themselves, without amount of pressure, and so many challenges of brand new people and people who had been monks, for 25 years, and it worked. And from my point of view, it means it's going to work. And it is working. And, my full expectation is that everybody in this Sangha, is invited to come into that level and be a lineage holder. The training is going to be, arduous, and, we're working very closely with a group, and I hope more of you will offer yourselves for the training. But it's very doable. This whole thing is going to work. So we may have a very unusual lineage in a certain way, but at the same exact time, strangely enough, it seems to be what the world needs. And the lack of ultimate hierarchy, the balance of male and female, the relationality, the warmth, and the tantric style of the lineage, I think it's a fit. So maybe I'll stop there. And are we having a hailstorm outside? What's going on out there? Yeah, that's interesting. So let's see if we have any questions or anything we can talk about. Elizabeth, welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can people hear the hail? I don't know if they can. They probably can't. Huh? Yeah.
It's so nice to have you here, Reggie. Thank you so much for sharing with us and being here.
It's my pleasure.
So our first question is from Anne in New York.
Mm-hmm.
In the practice you led, how much time should we spend practicing with the back line and how much with the midline? And what is the relationship between them in a practice session?
Well, you have a general kind of itinerary when we do sitting meditation, and I believe it's on the website, isn't it? That itinerary on the website now, or not? the points of the somatic practice of pure awareness, what we used to call shikantaza. I'm asking Scott Miriam, do you know if it's up yet?
It's for supporting members, so yeah, it's up there.
Yeah. You have an itinerary, and really, it's kind of like, I would liken meditation to having a map, which is the itinerary, and then you go into the jungle or the forest, and you're following the path, and then you have to use your senses. You have to smell, you have to listen, you have to feel, you have to taste. And, some days I'll spend a lot of time in the lower belly. I'll do maybe 3, 4, 5 sets of lower belly breathing, and then I'll just stay in the back line pretty much for the whole practice, I do that. And what happens is, it's because my body is calling me to it, if that makes any sense. On the other hand, you can do, a little bit of 12-foot lower belly breathing, come into your back line, explore, and I would go through all the points of shikantaza briefly. Open up the back line, the straight back, and the head is lifting, chin comes down, the ears move back of the neck opens, all the things that we teach. And then see what's wanted. You may, on that particular day, really want to just rest in that space. And, for example, this morning, after this difficult, but really wonderful conversation last night with my old Trungpa Rinpoche friend, I just rest in the back space and just try to let go and just be there. Other days, I may move into the mid-body. Now, we don't talk about the midline, we talk about the mid-body. The mid-body is from the sternum to the back line. It's the whole interior of our body, that where the richness of our human experience really is most manifest in a kind of naked and non-conceptual form. There are going to be days when, I'll go and I'll really be in there and exploring, particularly if there's a particular issue that I'm chewing on, and I'll be asking my body, what about this? So what I want to emphasize, and always in our lineage, this is an important point, we're not setting up a bunch of rules and regulations. Okay? We're giving you an itinerary, we're giving you a set of suggested protocols, and then each of us has to use his or her own intelligence about how it unfolds and what we're going to do. And every time you sit down, it's going to be different. And if it's not different, then you may be relying a little bit too much on the rules and regulations, if that makes any sense. So thank you, Anne. Good question.
This question is from Holder.
Mm-hmm.
Can you please talk about dispelling meditation that feels different than touch and go, or coming back to the breath? How do you recommend lowering the axe?
Splitting open it's a very gentle process, but it's a Mahamudra practice. I'll give you an example. There's an analogy that's used, and I use it in my teaching actually. You have a bundle of straw, and it's tied with a thread, and that's your mind. And you snip the thread, and the straw falls open. It's like His Holiness in the clouds. The space opens, and at the center it's brilliant, it's clear, it's open, it's immaculate. And that's what we do with obstacles. You snip whatever it is holding it together, and just let it fall open. That way you don't lose the energy of the obstacle, but you're more or less touching into its empty, open core or essence, if that makes any sense. So you could try the straw analogy, and then try it when something comes up that seems really hard and recalcitrant, something you can't move. Just snip the string and let it fall.
This is from Tim in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
Regarding discipline in practice, with 2 young kids, a new business, and aging parents, how do I start over and over since the discipline of my practice is always slipping away? Where does the discipline come from? Where does it go?
I think discipline comes from love, frankly. I think we need to do enough practice so we truly love that, the freedom that we find, and we love the sense of being at home in the body. And once we cultivate that love, then we will find ways to do it. I know the life you're talking about. I know how difficult that can be. But I think, finding at this time whatever space you can in your life, even if you get up and you do body work for 10 minutes or 15 minutes in the morning, you're building something very powerful. If you add the intention toward practice, 15 minutes of practice, and this is something I've noticed because, of course, many of our Sangha members, either have small children or have been, through, having babies and then infants and so on. If your intention is strong, and if you let yourself be haunted by your practice, and you regard your practice as a lover that you've been separated from for the time being, it's very, very painful, but it creates an enormous karmic container for practice later on. Most people, if they're in a couple situation, if you're a single parent, it's going to be more difficult. But if you're in a couple situation, most people can find, at least on the weekend or at some point during the week, they can find an hour or two to do something, and that can be very, very impactful. I think sometimes we set up these ideas of what we'd like to do, and then when we can't do it, we become discouraged and we give up. But there's, it's not like that. Anything that you do with intention is going to feed your love for your practice and your connection, because truly, practice is a lover, and at a certain point, the only thing you want to do is be in the arms of your lover. That's what you want. And I asked Rinpoche, more or less this question at one point, and he basically said, well, at a certain point, it'll be continuous, if you take that approach, then you'll be in the arms of your lover throughout your life. And that's, in the Mahamudra tradition, that's called the yoga of non-meditation, which means the point at which you don't separate from the meditative state, and then you can walk around, you can do anything you want to, and you're always there. So I would say, if you have small kids and a lot of demands, just take the big view. I mean, the good thing about spirituality is you are working with your whole life. I mean, that is your canvas, is your whole entire life. And it's probably the only thing in our life that we can take as a lifetime project is our spirituality. And I would definitely take that approach. Sometimes it feels like you're just stretching the canvas. You haven't even put the base on it yet, let alone put any oils on it, oil painting. But stretching the canvas is good. It's a good step.
Someone wanted us to know there's a tornado warning in Boulder County.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the
yes,
updates
tornado
I got.
warning in Boulder County, and also a flash flood warning in Crestone, which is, people are really freaked out about that.
So we have another question.
Sure, go ahead.
Meryl in Boulder wrote, "Sometimes I have a hard time discerning between fear and intuition in matters of the heart. Would you please speak to the difference between them?"
Fear
and intuition in matters of the heart.
Mm-hmm.
Have a hard time discerning between fear and intuition in matters of the heart. Would you speak to the difference between them?
Well, I think the important thing is to know when you're afraid and when you're doing something out of fear, and you need to clarify it. In a way, these are really the two. I mean, this is a very fundamental question, actually. Many times, as Meryl says, there's something that we want to do, and initially we're not sure whether it's out of fear that we want to do it, or it's out of inspiration that we want to do it, positive, wholesome inspiration. And at that point, I mean, you have to find out. Nobody can give you a recipe to figure it out. But the way to find out is not do anything. just sit. Shanti Deva says you sit, you become like a dry stick of wood. You just sit with it, you sit with it until you see, is this thing based on fear? Fear of being alone, fear of being rejected, fear of being unloved? Or is it based, and by the way, fear has a feeling of contraction and self-protection, so that might be helpful to us to notice that. Or is it based on inspiration, that I'm so inspired by this relationship or this person or this opportunity that I want to take a chance, and that inspiration has a feeling of opening, of letting go, of taking a chance and stepping into the unknown. Whereas fear is more retracting into what is known and what may be safe for us. But that's a very good question. You know, that constantly we have to get that sorted out. And you know, of course, in our lineage, you ask your body, you sit down and you feel into your body, is this fear? Is it fear? Is fear what I'm feeling? Yeah, thank you.
Tara in Pennsylvania writes, I'm stuck on egolessness. It is a term so widely used. Often in popular spiritual terms, it seems to me that it sometimes is used to deny each of our unique expressions. I and our own unique life experience, feelings, relationships, this incarnation. This does not appeal to me. I'm getting a sense that it is not how you are using the term. So my question is, would you be willing to define ego and egolessness painfully clearly from your vantage point?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really great question, and I'll quote John Wellwood on this point. I mean, first of all, this is Tara.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, this is a question that is in the air for anybody who's a Buddhist practitioner and is studying with Asian teachers. Briefly, I completely agree that in the Asian traditions, there is historically, you know, because of the nature of the cultures, agricultural societies in particular, there is a, how can I put it, there's not an appreciation of the sacredness of the human personality, of human individuality, and of human creativity. And John Wellwood, and I don't remember which book it's in, it might even be in an article, he comments on this, that, you know, many times if we bring a very deep creative inspiration to, you know, a very traditional Asian teacher, what we may get back is, well, that's just ego, and you should just label it thinking and turn away from it. And I agree, you know, completely, Tara, with your feeling that that's wrong. There's a beautiful story told in the Indian tradition, Indian Vajrayana tradition, about a king who was told that one of the students of the Buddha, who didn't really understand the Buddha's teaching very well, was telling this guy, he was saying, well, you should renounce the world and you should give up, you know, your creative possibilities, and you should just, follow the rules, and everything's going to be okay. And the king's response was, and he actually went to the Buddha, and because he said, this really doesn't feel right. And what he said was, the human personality, and of course I'm translating for you, but the human personality is sacred. Human creativity is sacred. The individuality of the individual person is it's a gift of the universe. And I would rather be born in the lowest hell than turn against that. And if you tell me that I have to turn against my individuality, not my ego, but my individuality and my creativity and my love of life and my appreciation of nature and the love that I have for my queen in order to be enlightened, then, or I'll go to hell, I would rather go to hell. And the Buddha actually said, you got it, you understand it. And that's when he taught Vajrayana, according to the old stories, that the Buddha realized here's finally somebody that actually gets it. In the tantric lineage, our tantric lineage, what egolessness means is basically setting aside left brain thinking and being willing to give birth to oneself, being willing to experience one's life with complete openness and complete nakedness, absolutely being willing to actualize the inspirations that come up in you and trust your deepest longings and your deepest yearnings and view them as your mission in life, to explore and to step into the unknown and see what your life needs to be. And what gets in the way of that is our judging mind, and that's what we mean by ego. So in the tantric lineage, this is a statement Saraha made. He said, the only problem with our life is what we think about our life. It's not our life itself. So that is, it's a very, very important distinction to make. And I think, another thing I would say is that particular teaching of the sacredness of the human person and the tremendously, the deep, deep imperative we have to live out our life as we are, the people that we are in our situation, that's what the universe wants from us. That's why we're here. And any sense that we have to withdraw from that because it's bad that's not us. That's some other tradition. It's not us, and it's not what we're doing. Meantime, I think we have to appreciate the Asian situation. When I first spent time in Asia, I saw all these monks, and they were completely. I was so upset, frankly, because I could see the system didn't allow them to individuate. It didn't allow them to really find out who they were. And everything that they believed and everything they thought came from whoever their preceptor was, or the head of the lineage. And they really didn't think for themselves. And their emotional development was stunted, and their interpersonal development was stunted. It really, really upset me. But I realized, at a certain point, I've got to let go of this, because this was this is the way the more collectivist agricultural societies have been for probably up to 10,000 years. When agriculture was first appeared in our world. And what can one say? The Vajrayana teachings were kept alive within that situation, and that's their karma. But we have a different karma. And we means the modern world now, because of course there are many, many people from Asia who are, listening to Dharma Ocean teachings and who really get it. And the modern Asian world is really aligned with you, Tara. The way you're thinking, and they find it unacceptable to be told that their creativity is just ego. But it's a battle we have to fight every day, to say yes to ourselves. And it isn't just, religions and spirituality and Buddhism, but it's multinational corporations, it's universities, it's any system where the system takes precedence over the individual person. We're going to find this. And this is, one of the great struggles of the modern world, is how stunted so many people are by the systems that are in place now. And I think that's one of the things that we have to offer the modern world, is showing people how within their karmic situation they can truly discover who they are, they can individuate, they can mature emotionally, and they can find their own creative outlets.
This question is from Mass in New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
I hope I'm not too dualistic here, but you reckon the Dharma Ocean lineage is closer more to cowboy Buddhism or Indian spirituality?
What kind of Buddhism?
Cowboy Buddhism.
Cowboy Buddhism?
Mm-hmm. Or Indian spirituality.
What kind of, like Indians?
I don't know. I imagine India.
India?
Yeah, and he's from New Zealand. But.
Yeah. Cowboy Buddhism. I kind of like that. I'm not sure what it means, though. Well, you know, the Indian situation, I do refer to it quite a bit, and so did Chogyam Trungpa. The Vajrayana tradition in India, you know, the Buddhist Tantra, as many of you know, was not monastic. It was not organized. It wasn't bureaucratized. It was very, very decentralized, you know, the way we are in Dharma Ocean. I mean, we're actually modeling ourselves on the early Vajrayana in India. And these people were householders. They were men. They were women. They were people of all castes. Whereas the Buddhist monastic thing, pretty much you had to be an upper caste in order to have the wealth to be able to, you know, to be a monk, you know, in India, supported by your family. That's where the sport came from largely. All ages, all circumstances. Some of them were illiterate, some were literate. And the most important thing was what I've been talking about here, was the practice and the realization within your given karmic situation. And that is really very different from organized Buddhism, which has certain preferred lifestyles, like you should be a monk, you should be male, you know, the more educated you are, the more higher you're going to rise in the ranks at the monastery, and that kind of thing. So, very decentralized and very, very, very body-oriented. And, you know, we haven't talked about this really much tonight, but the orientation always for those folks was that the body itself is the territory of pilgrimage, and the body itself becomes a gateway into another world. It's similar to, I don't know if you know anything about wormholes in cosmological theory and astrophysics. Wormholes, or in particular black holes, which are these points in space that they look very limited, but there's some significant mathematical evidence. We don't have any experimental evidence yet, but the mathematical models, Einstein figured his thing out through mathematical models, not through observation. And mathematical models suggest that a black hole, limited in extent, may be a gate into a limitless universe. In other words, the space in the black hole, which we can localize. You know, the Milky Way has a black hole at its center. We know its dimensions. You can be on one side, you can be in the other. But what's being said here is you go into the black hole, and it may very well be a gateway into a limitless universe of another dimension. And that is exactly what the tantric practitioner has said about the body. The body looks like it's this limited thing, but it actually isn't. You go into the body, and all of a sudden you find yourself in a universe that is much, 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 much bigger and vaster and more fantastic than the universe that we can observe outside our body. So it's very, you know, if you mean by cowboy Buddhism that it's very much up to the individual practitioner to discover, I would say yes. That it doesn't follow the rules and regulations of conventional society, although it may be respectful of them, it doesn't follow them. I would say yes to that also. And as far as the Indian tradition goes, yeah, I mean, that's where those are our roots, you know, we're lay practitioners, and we appreciate the amazing opportunities that our ordinary life offers us that you would not find in a monastery or even in a cave, frankly, to discover the nature of the universe itself. Because, you know, that is actually one of the key points of Tantra. Buddhism, conventional Buddhism, is interested in enlightenment. Tantra is interested in life. It's interested in the way in which the universe, in every atom, in every galaxy, in every person, in every star, how the universe is manifesting itself and giving birth to life. In Tantra, there's an immense love of life, a passion for life, because life is actually the essence of all being. So the Tantra is, from that point of view, slightly wild, because it has this unconditional reverence for what is and what lives. From the Tantric viewpoint, everything lives. An atom, a subatomic particle, is just as living as a human, or the planet Earth, or a quasar 14 billion light years away. They are all expressions of life, and there's a sense of the enormous sacredness of being itself, and that being is found within life. So I don't know, is that cowboy Buddhism? If so, let's do it.
This is an anonymous question.
Mm-hmm.
What is the best way to work with a trauma history as part of a Dharma Ocean practice?
Well, from a certain point of view, Dharma Ocean is, and Tantra is about working with trauma. We all have experienced multiple insults to our human person, going back who knows how far, at least into our pre-uterine life. The whole structure of our human personality is built upon one trauma response after another. Trauma means something happened that was so overwhelming and so painful that we couldn't actually stay with it, and we pulled back, we dissociated. And we did that through our whole babyhood and childhood, and that's what we do now. I mean, that's what the human ego is the sum total of all of the traumatic responses, all of the ways in which we have pulled back and dissociated. The ego is basically, unless it goes through a period and process of transformation, the ego itself is in a dissociated state. I mean, that's the whole point. That's what samsara is. You're not living your own life. You're living, some other fantasy version. So, of course, there are different levels of trauma, but I would say if you are so severely traumatized, which many of us are actually, at different times in our life, that you can't function, literally cannot function, then my suggestion would be just get help, find a good therapist, find a good modality. I'm very much in favor of Peter Levine and van der Kolk and some of the somatically oriented, Hakomi, some of the somatically oriented trauma therapists. I think it's very powerful and completely consistent with what we're doing. And then if you are practicing, traumas are going to come up all over the place, and this isn't the time for me to go into it, but the most fascinating part of my journey over the last, I'd say, 8 years has been realizing how situations in my life and people in my life, going back to the beginning, how they, my responses to them have created largely my neurotic personality. Of course not my basic energy, but the parts of myself where, and I say selves because, there isn't any really one self, that really don't relate, and don't connect and don't change. If that's your situation, then the practice itself takes care of it. And somatic descent, in my opinion, is the greatest tool for working with trauma. And again, maybe we can have a whole session on that at some point. But first of all, making room for trauma to surface, and then second of all, finding out, what is that trauma, and tracing it back to the roots, because that's what we have to do experientially. We've got to go back into, for example, our natal family, and we have to find ourselves, as I did quite recently, in my house in Connecticut as a small boy, and what that actually felt like. When we do that, and this is something Trungpa Rinpoche emphasized, when we are able, through our practice and the stability and strength we develop through our practice and the openness, to really touch base and be in the original traumatic event, then it resolves itself. That's how we do it. That's the Buddhist path, in my opinion. So there's a lot to say here. Trauma comes up in the body work. It comes up in the shikantaza practice, or what we're now calling the somatic practice of pure awareness. It comes definitely in the Mahayana, because it gets between us and other people. And in the Vajrayana, you actually go looking for it. So trauma is, it's one of the most important spiritual, I would say, teachings of the modern age. And it has clarified things that are in Buddhism, but they're not stated very clearly, and how to work with them is not stated very clearly. We're very, very lucky, that these teachings on trauma are present, and we're learning so much about it. And also, I would say we're very lucky that we have traumas that surface, because that's actually how we grow as people, through resolving all of these unconscious attitudes and beliefs that are called traumatic responses, that condition so much of our life and get between us and actually being able to live fully and nakedly, not only with other people, but with nature, with the universe, with ourselves. So a very fascinating and very, very compelling topic, and one that, I'm not, apart from the incapacitating trauma, my personal opinion is somatic descent is probably the most powerful tool for working with trauma that I've discovered, including study of the Jungian work and Hakomi for the last 8 years. Somatic descent, it's it. And yeah, we should probably have a class on that. Actually, it'd be really fascinating to focus on that, on our live streaming.
Dave in Florida writes, I was wondering if you might be able to speak about the idea of discipline, how to be dedicated without being aggressive, or how to be gentle and considerate without being lazy.
I would set aside all of that kind of thinking. I don't think we have to figure it out. I would say the whole question of discipline, in this case, in the case of Dave, yes, would be to try to be as undisciplined as you possibly can for a month about your practice. Try to be lazy. Try to be inconsistent. Try to be as flaky as you possibly can. And whatever it comes up that you're afraid of you might be, do it, go into it, and see what happens. And then, so I went a month. Today is June 4th. So on July 4, isn't it Independence Day?
Mm-hmm.
Please email me, and you can send it to my assistant, Terry Dillian, at assistant@dharmocean.org, and tell me what happened. Because I'm sensing here a kind of fear of things in yourself. And I think that's the first thing we need to do, is we need to step into those and see what's going on there. So whatever it is you're afraid of, do it. As long as it doesn't hurt anybody, and it doesn't sound like this is really an issue for you. Whatever you're afraid of in yourself, whether it's laziness, whether it's can't get it together, whether it's wasting time, go for it. If you want to watch TV instead of meditating for an hour, watch for 5 hours. Sound good? Give it a try. And let me know what happens.
Alan in Queenstown, New Zealand asks, kindly speak to the distinction between being judgmental and discrimination.
In discrimination, there's no thinking. You just see. For example, when the rain falls, and then it falls harder, and then it falls harder, you can see it splashing on the streets, and if the streets are warm, you can see the steam rising. And that's discrimination. You see how it is. If somebody's angry, you see that. If somebody's kind, you see that. Judgmentalism is when you form opinions about what you see. The problem with judgmentalism, it reduces the experience. It makes it much smaller. It's very, very interesting. We'll talk about this more when we get to the Mahayana, but if we truly see into another person and their life, you see how it is and you see why it is. And your heart opens with such sympathy and such love. Even if it's something that, is inconvenient for you. I'll give you an example. The other morning, we'd been up late, and the yard guys showed up at God knows what it was. It felt like it was like 5:30 in the morning with their leaf blowers. And one thought might be, damn those yard guys, we told them not to come until later. And the other thought was, here were these people, who this is what they're doing with their life. This is how they're getting through the day, is running these machines that are so loud they destroy their nervous systems. And they're probably working from 5:30 in the morning until night, every day, 7 days a week. What can you say? All you can feel is a tremendous amount of tenderness for how it is for all of us humans, because we're kind of all like that. And we should have that same softness and tenderness actually toward ourselves. We should not be hard on ourselves. Everything that we are and everything that goes on with us has come about through causes and conditions and influences and experiences in this world. We came into a world with so much suffering and so much confusion. And, we were born to people who loved us, but they were in so much pain themselves often. And that's how it is. That's how the universe works. It delivers life in the midst of pain and suffering and even death. Judgmentalism short-circuits the whole process of seeing that, understanding it, and letting our hearts open toward it. Judgmentalism it's not helpful at all. Judgmentalism actually gets in the way of discrimination. Discrimination means seeing things, experiencing them fully, seeing how it is, seeing how the world works. And that's what the Tantra is all about. It's about this world and how it goes. And the more you see, the only thing you wind up with is incredible amount of tenderness and sympathy and love for all the beings. So maybe that's enough.
Okay. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. There'll be a live stream recording available soon on this webpage. And until we see you again, we look forward to it. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, Reggie. It's really wonderful to be with you.
Thank you.